It's quite a big deal when someone makes an accusation against you, especially if you're a well known individual like Diddy. And obviously, quite a few allegations have been made by now. Lots of them of sexual natures, of assaults, of drugging, of trafficking, of kidnapping, all sorts of things in both civil and federal crimes. In the new documentary on Peacock, The Making of a Bad Boy, Al B. Sure, former member of a record label Uptown that Diddy originally started with, and former artist himself, making allegations not just of sexual abuse, but of murder of Kim Porter, Diddy's ex, and also Albie Shore's ex, and also accusations that there was an attempt on his life as well. Joining me to discuss, Eric Faddis, defense attorney, former prosecutor. Big thing to make a claim like that, even if the person is behind bars right now and probably won't be getting out. But murder, this is something we've been speculating on for a while, and now someone very, very close to the fire is saying, yeah, I think that might be the case. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a big one, clearly. The federal case involves allegations of sexual assault, of arson, of physical assault, all of that, but murder takes it to the next level. Now Diddy's been implicated and accused of witness and victim and tampering and intimidation, as well as threats. And so for someone to come out and make that claim, they're taking a significant risk. Does that help support their credibility in the eyes of some? I think it does.
And this is a claim that there's no civil suits about it. There's no evidence in the public for it, at least as of right now. There's nothing criminally being investigated. This is just one man making this claim on a documentary. But certainly suspicions arise when you have to take a look back at this man everybody thought they knew, and now they're having to kind of reconcile who he really was on the other side. It feels like almost anything is possible. But to make the claim, and he says in there of the murder of Kim Porter, and he goes, should I have said allegedly? Yeah, it is an allegation, but I mean, is there any sort of risks Albie Shore is taking by making this claim publicly right now, without being any sort of charges or anything at this point in time?
Well, let's be clear. I mean, Diddy has significant reach. He's had that for a long time, and even though he's incarcerated, he still has it. His resources are dwindling, but he did have substantial resources. He had significant connections all across the United States and internationally, I'm sure. So, could Diddy get really mad about this? Someone saying he killed his ex-wife? Certainly he could. There's absolutely a risk there. And I think that this accuser is differently postured, like you said, because he doesn't really have a financial motive. He doesn't have an ongoing claim. And so, does that make him more believable? I think some folks would say, yeah.
I guess the question would be, is this a ploy? Is this, I mean, if Albie Shore and other people that were close to Kim Porter, and there's a lot of them that feel that her death was very suspicious. It was lobar pneumonia. She was 47 years old. As far as everyone knows, in pretty good health. The odds of dying of that are very slim. But in fact, she did die. You can be in that other percentile and it just not make it. That may be the case here. But to make those claims and to put it out there, is Albie Shore trying to get Diddy to sue him? Because if he were to do that, if Diddy were to file a civil suit against Albie Shore, that would open up a world of discovery into this very allegation. And if Diddy has nothing to hide, then Diddy has nothing to hide. But that might not be a door one would want to open if there is something behind the curtain. And I'm not saying it's murder, but just maybe something you don't want out there.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about with the discovery process can be super revealing, Tony. We're talking about depositions under oath of really any of the parties involved. So Albie Shore, Diddy, those depositions can be requested. Also, requests for production of materials. So we're talking about their alleged diaries that Kim Porter had. There are encrypted messages, things like that. All of that would come to the surface if there was, or likely come to the surface if there was such a civil suit. And so certainly could be revealing on both sides and perhaps to the detriment of Diddy.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't want attention on something, I would think you wouldn't be necessarily, let's go after and sue him. But the way it sounded in the doc is that I'll be sure, and this is, I mean, just my conjecture from what I'm picking up of what he was saying, was that there's legal proceedings going on right now, not necessarily in a court, I'm going to guess, but with an attorney, maybe preparing for a potential civil lawsuit or wrongful death lawsuit. Do you think that's what he might have been referring to, as there's nothing on file as of this recording?
Tony, even though there might not be an actual case that's been filed, that doesn't mean there isn't legal maneuvering and measures being taken. In fact, it is customary for the attorneys to be involved pre-suit and to be, as Tony Busby did on behalf of some of his Diddy accusers, make demands, send demand letters to people whom they think are responsible. And they have a back and forth and an exchange, and essentially is like, hey, if you don't pay us this money, all of this stuff is going to come to light publicly, so pay us this money. And so, is it possible that there is such sort of legal negotiations and a back and forth taking place regarding this exact matter, even though there's no case filed? Absolutely.
And I'm going to guess here. I don't think Albie Shore is going after money of Diddy at this point. I'm thinking it's more in the principle of this, of exposing what he believes is something very wrong, a murder allegation. So, I mean, one can do that civilly. Can go criminal if the actual authorities, state authorities, local authorities, or federal authorities want to get involved. I don't know that that is the case. They're going to have to weigh any evidence and say, yeah, we think we have a case here. But civilly, it could certainly go on just by filing suit. I mean, that's what we saw with the OJ case. Found innocent in the actual court of law, the criminal court, but in civil, found guilty. Never did end up spending a dime on the Goldmans, but found guilty with a large judgment. What sort of things could be dug into here should this become a civil case with Albie Shore going against Diddy for wrongful death of Kim Porter? Again, this is all speculation, but what kind of evidence do you need here? I mean, obviously, this is 2018, so there is going to be a digital footprint to a certain extent. But could we be talking going as far as exhuming a body to take a look at? Because it is still there as far as we know.
Exhuming a body is very rare, but not unprecedented. Sometimes when they think a death has been settled, they think they know what happens, and then years later, there are questions raised that are compelling in nature. A judge can order that a body be exhumed, and so that could take place. On top of that, it's my understanding Kim Porter had some secrecy, not in a culpable way, but in a protective way. It's my understanding she had secret diaries and some messages that were not disclosed to everybody. It seemed like they were being kept secret from Diddy. What do those say? Yeah. What allegations could be revealed from those?
And it's interesting because earlier last year, there was what was claimed to be the diary of Kim Porter, a very small diary. Being released to the public. Even Albie Shore said, this is not it. This is not the one. I don't believe it. But he, in this documentary, came out now and said Kim was writing a diary towards the end of her life, writing down everything that happened. So it's not necessarily saying that there isn't a diary, just that the one that was dropped last year isn't the one, but one does seem to exist, which is quite interesting because I think a lot of us thought, okay, well, if this one was kind of a fake thing, yeah, people do that sort of crap and you're not surprised. But this puts the diary back into play as an actual piece of evidence that does exist. And it is a diary, but I would imagine the feds would have their hands on this at this point if it exists.
Well, you would hope so, but not necessarily. I'm not sure how Kim Porter's death had really been connected to the larger Diddy sexual assault, human trafficking investigation. That there's a chance that the feds sort of like focused on those allegations, and yeah, his wife died a while back, and they said it was pneumonia, and we've got enough stuff to handle on our own. So they might have not looked terribly into that diary, and if there was kind of like a fake or an incomplete or abridged diary released before, the question arises. Who did that? Is that some sort of act to cover something up?
It's a really good question. It's the fascinating part of these claims in this documentary, to me, is the fact that it's coming from someone that was very close to Kim Porter. I mean, he was a former partner. They have a child together. They did maintain a friendly relationship as best that they could while she was alive. Diddy seemed to want nothing of that, and Kim even allegedly came to him and said, "Look, just stay out of this." It seems like she was kind of under the Diddy spell at the time, because I don't want you to die and I don't want me to die. And I'm just paraphrasing there, but again, very strong accusations to be making about somebody. He is certainly down. He's in prison, but he's not there on these charges right now. I guess one could glean that if he were to push into this more in a civil way, that I would think federal authorities would at least take a look at it, not guaranteeing they're going to go and file any criminal charges, though, correct?
Yeah, there's certainly no guarantee, but absolutely, if there were civil proceedings, you better believe there'd be feds sitting in that courtroom observing. It's a public case, or very likely would be a public case. Yeah, and we've seen before how documentaries and civil proceedings and stuff, especially in our modern era of social media, can be compelling to law enforcement entities. They see the momentum building, they see the allegations, they see the possible evidence behind it, and they look into it further. Absolutely, that could happen with Diddy if there is a murder accusation.
And there's a lot. Another point that he makes in it, Javi D, Andre Hall, Kim Porter, these were all people that died under circumstances, young ages, raising questions about their connections to Diddy. All people that were there at Uptown Records at the very beginning, 5 of them, and now only Diddy and Al B are still standing. Life happens, people die. But I know there's certainly room for questions now that we know far more about Diddy than we did in the past. Another big allegation that is made in the documentary, and it doesn't go into great detail about it. In fact, for the promotion of this being such a big piece of the case, I was surprised how little was actually talked about. But there's allegations from people that grew up around Diddy, like in the same house as Diddy, that his mom, Janice, would have pretty raucous parties as Diddy was a young child. Parties where there was lots of drinking, lots of drugs, lots of prostitutes, pimps. Allegations that Janice even had a little group of women that she would bring in to help keep Diddy and his friends happy in a sexual way. If these allegations are true, what are we talking about here? I mean, you have a lot of people who could testify to it. Are we talking about statute of limitations that would be gone at this point for a parent exposing children or minors to such environments? Are these just going to remain allegations and more evidence as to what made Diddy Diddy?
Well, one thing we might be talking about is these sound very much like freak-offs. These
Yeah.
sound like the sex parties that Diddy was having as he grew into adulthood. So it's sort of eerie, the parallel between these accusations against his mother when Diddy was a child and what we're seeing now. In terms of statute of limitations, the types of charges that could be brought for that are like contributing to the delinquency of a minor. And those are all usually misdemeanors or low-level felonies. Usually they have a statute of limitations around like between 4 and 10 years or so. This happened decades ago. So could there be any criminal responsibility if those things did occur? I think it's unlikely.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you on that. I mean, it's one of those things where it kind of makes you understand the recipe a little bit better of what makes up Diddy. Doesn't excuse anything by any means. I mean, he's a 50-some-year-old man, so should know better, even if that is what you were brought up around. But yeah, I mean, it's like echoes of just repeating the past in a very dark way. If this was normal to you, he obviously, if the allegations are true, just continued doing what he was doing. We've seen cases like this where abuse that occurred with a minor or exposure to things almost used as a defense sometimes for like, look, this is what he was brought up, and how would you expect him to be any different? Not that would really hold a whole lot of water here. It's typically done when the minors are still relatively minors, but Do you think that any of that will be brought up in this case? Diddy's attorneys are already saying that, yeah, look, the freak offs happened, but there was no involvement with minors. This is all consenting adults. You're going after consensual adults doing what they want to do.
I think Diddy's alleged exposure to explicit sexual activity when he was a minor might be used, but not in the way that some people think. I think it might be used by Diddy's team. I think it might be used to try to explain, like, hey, this is how this kind of thing comes about. And although they're going to argue he wasn't engaging in any criminal activity, if you think, jury, that this is sort of untoward stuff, well, gosh, he was 7 when his mom exposed him to it. It's not his fault. I think that that's the direction they're going to go. It's a similar direction that was presented in R. Kelly's sentencing when he alleged that he was exposed to sexual contact at an early age, and that contributed to what happened in his case.
Does a jury have any sympathy for something like that, especially on a level like this? Just gross exploitation. This isn't a case of one person carries on this. I mean, not that that makes it any better, but in some sort of isolated way. But this is just, it's basically, full blown prostitution at a level, if not even, even worse than that of trafficking, which is what he's accused of.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's certainly not a statutory defense. It's not something where the law says, hey, if you were abused as a kid, you get to have weird coercive sex parties as an
Yeah.
adult. But on the other hand, do juries want to know the full picture? Do they want to know influences for a person's conduct? Can those things affect how certain jurors see things? Sure, I don't think the majority of jurors would be overly moved to side with Diddy or anything, but there could be an impact.
The fact that the attorneys for Diddy have come out and flat out said that yeah, in these videos it's all adults. So they're recognizing the freak offs happened. They're recognizing adults were engaging in consensual sexual activity. Now they're going to have to prove that these adults in the video were, number one, adults, and then number two, that they weren't drugged, that they weren't coerced. When you have a lot of them saying they were drugged and coerced in the actual videos, I guess, I don't know how you actually prove that they were drugged and coerced, other than a lot of them in volume saying that they were, and maybe finding more evidence in the house. There was the hundreds of bottles of baby oil that were there that some are claiming were drugged as well.
Yeah, so my understanding of what happened is Diddy's defense team went and viewed 9 or so videos of these freak offs, and they depict what they depict, and you can't get out of that really. And so they kind of had to own up to, yes, this is a raucous sex party, but these people don't look like they're being coerced. Now the question remains, can you view a video and tell whether someone is acting of their own free will, especially if that person is under the influence of intoxicants? I'm not sure you can.
Yeah, I don't think you can either. I mean, it's that. I mean, that's been a big thing that's been argued in the porn industry and such as well, of coercion and people doing things that they didn't agree to do to, and that industry has had a kind of a reconciling of that sort of behavior, and we're talking about things that were going on here well before that reconciling even happened. We're talking things that were never meant for public consumption. These were meant strictly for Diddy's own enjoyment. Yeah, I mean, how do you argue that? How do you prove that these people were not coerced or under the influence of something just by looking at the video? I don't know. I don't know that you really can, or how you can argue that.
It's tough. I read the letter that Diddy's team recently filed in the federal case this week, I believe. And what, their observations, the way they characterize them, is that the participants were appeared to be completely in control, appeared to be like having a dominant presence, and also appeared to be enjoying it. Now, that's just one person looking at a video, and that's just their subjective opinion. And I think it sort of is a little bit too undercomplicated, especially when we talk about the nature of the allegations and the factors allegedly involved.
I've been around people who were on drugs, who have been drinking, that looked very competent and looked like they were very much enjoying what they were doing. It doesn't mean they necessarily were the next day when they look back on it. And especially if the allegations are true of consuming drugs or some sort of alcohol or something that impaired judgment without their knowledge. And I think that that's a big piece of this, is it not?
Absolutely. That goes directly to the charge against Diddy in the federal criminal case of sexual assault by force or coercion. So there are allegations of physical threats, but there are also allegations that he just overcame their will, kind of by deception, by drugging them without their knowledge. And so, even if a person looks like they're having a decent time, if they were given a substance against their will and without their knowledge that overcame their ability to make decisions in a clear fashion.
Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Bruschi, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.